I've always enjoyed bicycles. I think they're a wonderful invention, particularly if you have roads, as we do today, tarmac roads. As a child and a teenager, they were my freedom. They're a great way to travel. I cycled to college, which was over 10 miles each way. I had a girlfriend who lived about 12 miles away, and I would cycle there. My sister and I would go out for the day, really. We'd leave at about 10 and get back about 4. Unbelievable, really, now. But things were different. Roads were quieter, as they are now. Well, I don't know for how much longer cycling is going to be allowed. There's rumours that it might be banned. Exercising outside might be banned. But anyway. Bicycles I found were understandable just by looking. If you had a little bit of mechanical sympathy, you could look and figure things out. They're fixable with hand tools. You don't need anything other than hand tools. They're human-sized. There's nothing that's too small and nothing that's too large. Maybe now, for me to see clearly, some things are a bit small. But, well, I was around them a lot. Great form of exercise. Fantastic. Building them, all sorts. And I'd watch the Tour de France, and something kept coming up. Campagnolo. Or Campagnolo, I believe. Campagnolo. These were the best components going. And I'd look at them in shops. I'd look at bikes that had them on there, but way out of my price range. Did a little bit of looking. Apparently, Tullio Campagnolo, it came about because I think he had an accident. I better be careful what I say because I get this wrong. But I think he had an accident in a race. He was a cyclist and then turned to manufacturing stuff, top quality. I read somewhere that he would change the alloy. It's aluminium alloy, but it's got a steel chain and it would wear. So if he found a better alloy, he would just change it. There wouldn't be like, this is Mark II or this is Mark III. He'd just keep things the same, but change the alloy to make it better and not say anything. So things got better without any fanfare. Apparently, every single part is replaceable. And my friend, a mentor of mine, told me about the shop in London back in the day that claimed to have every single Campagnolo part. And he went there one day for some rivet or some small thing. So he said he walked into the shop and there was just racks and racks up to ceiling and a sliding ladder where you could climb up with boxes and things. So he walked into the shop and the guy was there, didn't say anything. He stood there for quite a while. The guy was doing stuff, turned around, noticed him, still didn't say anything. And I think eventually after a while, the guy said, "What?" Well, actually, have you got this part for this particular component that I'm after? Guy looked, didn't say anything, and then disappeared. He heard some noise, ladders moving and so on. He came back with the part. Obviously, guy seemed to be a little bit eccentric or grumpy, but he got his part. Well, I continue to use bicycles, and some time ago, don't know how long now, over 10 years, maybe a bit more, more. I had a look, I had a bicycle, I had it's all right, it worked. And I wondered, and I looked for Campagnolo parts on eBay. And there they were. Loads of them. I looked for a frame. I looked for all the bits. And I thought, quite affordable now. Because actually they've got a price since because they've become kind of classic and vintage. But at that time, people were just sort of selling stuff off because everything's gone to carbon fibre or titanium or all the rest of it. So I got a frame. I think that came from Belgium. Very well packed. Wheels, I don't know where they came from, somewhere in Europe. I remember I got some brakes sent from America, but they were the wrong. You've got to be very careful. They were too long a drop. There's 3 different drops that you have to measure, and these were too long, so they didn't bite the rim. They were too low. You couldn't adjust them up. So I had to send those back to America. I think I lost the postage. Anyway, eventually I got wiser. Obviously, you have to measure things and learn your business. So I built this bike. Nearly all Campagnolo Super Record. Yeah. And the frame, as you'll see later, is a French build, but with Italian tubing. So it's pretty much 70s, 80s Tour de France machine. Of course, that's like owning a Ferrari. Are you going to go shopping in a Ferrari, a vintage one? The suspension's stiff until you get up to speed. Then you realise, oh, all these things. So it's a lovely thoroughbred, vintage, frisky Italian Mistress, if I may say. But quite demanding. Comes into her own when you're racing, not surprisingly, when you're going at speed. Quite twitchy and difficult to stay on a little bit when you're going slowly. But as you start to get the inertia, whatever it is in the wheels and so on, the light wheels, but once they start to spin, then you realise. Not very comfortable sometimes to saddle, but you're not meant to be sitting there having a nice time. They expect you to be the whole time, so some of your weight is lifted because you're pushing down on the pedals. So you start to realise that these things were built to race. And the tyres, which I explain later. For racing, who cares? Just change them. But for me, not really an option. So a while ago, obviously I didn't use that one all the time. Obviously I had an old banger which I was using most of the time, but the old banger I got was okay, but it got difficult to repair, difficult to get parts for because it was old as well. And I decided, let me get an everyday bike. And there was an offer on in a shop called Halfords in the UK, and that's the one you see, the Boardman, which I have to say, for what it is intended for, is excellent. Difference between them? The Boardman's more comfortable. It's very solid and dependable feeling, but it's quite light. It's modern. Gears are excellent. Brakes are fantastic, hydraulic disc brakes. It's very good for what it's intended for. The Italian Mistress, lively, jittery, and I'm just not strong enough because the gears are so high. I mean, going up a hill, but those guys have got legs like this and they go up a hill out of the saddle and they can do it. Well, I can't. So lovely to have, but for sure my everyday bike is the kind of safer, more comfortable Boardman. But it's very nice to have what I dreamed of, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago maybe. Yeah. Having a job seeing the screen here in the lovely sunlight. Boardman then, 36 spoke, hydraulic disc brakes, I think 38 seaters, 32 tyres, so fairly thick tyres. It's a hybrid, meant to be able to handle round town, rough roads, but to be reasonably fast as well. Got the GoPro mounted there. You see the bars, stem, aluminium. It says triple butted. I know the double butted meant that the tube thickness was greater there and then got narrower and then got greater because you need the strength at the end. This says triple butted, so I assume that means similar, but excuse my knees. I prefer old school. I like to have my feet located, but I suppose I get used to it, but I don't like that business. I don't like the idea of it anyway. As you can see, a sloping frame. The rear stays, you can see, are shaped. It's probably for comfort, to allow some flex, because the aluminium can be very stiff with those wide bore tubes. This is interesting, I find anyway. Looky here, we've got 11 speed at the back there, going from very small to very large, and a relatively small, does it say what it is? 44 tooth, I think that says on the front. And it's indexed, so that means you can see the cable, but it means, obviously you shouldn't do this really when it's not running, we're not turning the pedals because it won't, but it means if you go up, and you hear that click, it shifts the cable a certain amount, and it accurately, the idea is it accurately, put it back down, moves the derailleur in or out. The chain line, as you can imagine, can get quite extreme, because particularly if you go onto the inner cog at the back there. Reasonably lightweight. Of course, I've got this on the back, a few other bits and bobs. Brakes are fantastic, good in the wet. Gears are very well judged. Everything, I'd say, very well judged for what it is. I'm going to move on now, if I may, to the Italian Mistress. Lord have mercy. Now, you'll forgive me if I excess a little bit about things, but there's my Campagnolo. This is what I used to dream of. This I put together over a period of about 3 years, I think, with all the bits coming from all over the place on eBay. Some of them roll. Send them back. The frame is MBK, which is a branch of Motor Bicane, French. Motor Bicane made lots of utility bikes, but they made a few higher end bikes, frames, and bikes with frames. This one, as you can see, it's nicely done with those lugs. Not overly fancy, but they're nice lugs. Importantly, the frame tubing is Columbus SL. Back in the day, 70s, 80s, the choice was between Reynolds 531, which is British, and the Continentals, French, Italian, Spanish, the rest of them tended to use Columbus SL. So that tells me that this frame, despite being MBK, is one of their class models. Front forks, Columbus, Foderi laminati. Everything else is Campag Super Record, Campag Super Record, Campagnolo Super Record, The hubs, I believe, Campagnolo Super Record. The rims, Campagnolo Strada. They are a bit newer, I think, than the rest of the material, because I don't think they were making rims in the time when all these were here. Look at that. These have got sloping fork grounds, which was popular, well, some rather than the, I don't know what you'd call them, but they slope obviously there. And this is the Continental, being Columbus of course, Continental forks, whereas the British ones tend to be round. You can see these are kind of oval. The gears are changed by these. Tighten that up to adjust the friction, and really you just have to be skillful. They're not click stopped, so if you get it wrong you end up between gears, or you just that's part of the manual involvement of this era of cycling. Cinelli. Stem. Cinelli. And the bars. Cinelli. These are big bars. I think a little bit too big for my liking. Brakes. Campagnolo Super Record. Can't see if I'm on them. Yes, I am. The levers. They're drilled. Campagnolo Super Record. The hoods, original gum hoods, are now getting a bit dried out. Don't think you can get them. I don't know if they're making replacements, but you know, why would they? Headset's a very important part. Strong light, which is French. Doesn't surprise me because the frame was built in France, even though it's Italian tubing. The pedals, Campagnolo Record, not Super Record. Super Record had titanium spindles, so lighter. A friend of mine back in the day, whenever anyone said, with regard to bicycles, said titanium, said snap. It had a bit of a reputation for snapping. And I thought, for me, well, you know, I'm not going to snap, I'm not strong enough, but anything else? Notice, Regina, freewheel, another classic from back in the day. Notice there are 6 sprockets and they're quite closely spaced. And check this out. You see the largest one? Not very large enough. Looking at the inner ring here, does it say how many teeth? I'll have to count them. It doesn't. 42. So a 42 tooth inner ring going to whatever that is. So you compare that to 44 tooth inner ring, so fairly similar, but going to oof. So you can see going up, it was a lot easier on this. I've got to tell you, I'm just not strong enough. Even in its lowest gear, I'm just not strong enough to get off and walk, I'm afraid. So remember, these are designed for racing, and those guys have got legs like you wouldn't believe. And they're at it the whole time, not designed for poodling around. So it's a bit like having a Ferrari to go shopping. The saddle, San Marco Supercorsa, leather. Conco, wearing their, well, bounties. Conco San Marco Supercorsa. There was something else. Seat pin. Campagnolo Record. Super Record is fluted. Fluting is like that. And has a different way of adjusting at the top there. I'm only going to do this once, I imagine. I've just cleaned it up. Oh, the wheels. 32 spoke. These 36 spoke, so stronger but heavier. These very light. And a bit of a bugbear for me is these tubular tyres. I don't know if you know what they are. I'm going to put the camera back on the stand when I've finished showing you everything and tell you why. Someday I might keep the hubs and have a new rim fitted so it can take clincher, modern clincher tyres, because these types are just, they're great for racing but not for me. To my mind, pretty much everything about this is beautiful. It's almost like it's machined, but it's almost like it's handmade as well, where everything flows. You see here, the black part, the shaping, the breaks. Shape of the stem. The levers, everything high quality as well. Very little slopping about. If I compare it to the modern hybrid, well, that's nice. This is hydroformed aluminium. I know what that means. But somehow, nothing quite as pleasing to my eyes. It's nice enough, a bit clumsy. Yeah. A bit chunky at the top there, and this sort of spacers stacked up, and that, I suppose it's a look, but it's not beautiful to my eyes. Very functional. Show you some things here. Pedals. No play in them. Can you hear? That's okay, there's no play, but what about these 40-year-old pedals? Beautiful now. No play. Just going to show you a few things then, if I may. So these 40-year-old hubs, no play. That ticking you can hear is the fabric off these tubs, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. Yeah. Notice the Campagnolo quick release lever. Beautiful again. They're tubular tyres. The tyre is, there's the riding surface, is tubular and sewn together all the way around underneath. And it has an inner tube in there. How on earth they do it, I don't know. The stitching is then covered, glued with tape, and that's your tub. And you've got the valve poking through. When you come to the rim is slightly concave all the way around. Obviously you line up with where the valve goes through, and you glue the tyre onto the rim, making sure you don't get glue on the edge of the rim where the brakes are, and the rim is stuck on. If you don't do it well, you go around a corner racing, the tyre will roll off. You can use rim tape, double-sided sticky tape, which is what I've used there. I don't go around corners fast on that. You know, so the issue, I mean, you can pump them very hard, up to 200 I think, really hard, and they're very flexible, so people still say, some of them are silk. The carcass, if you like, is made of silk and then rubber impregnated. They don't last that long, but they're meant for racing. If you get a puncture, you have to take the thing off the rim. Remember, it's stuck. I had to pull the thing off the rim. Very careful to find out where the leak is, because if you do it in the wrong place and the air's travelled around and come out somewhere else, you're going to be sorry. You're going to be sorry anyway, I'll tell you. You need to pull off the tape that's stuck where the stitching is, cut open the stitching without cutting the inner tube, and trying to make as small a gap as is possible while still being able to get the tube out, hopefully where the puncture is. Fix the puncture with a pad, put the tape back in through that gap you've made, sew the thing back up sufficiently that it doesn't, with that pressure, it doesn't start coming undone, so you have to over sew, obviously where it's been sewed before, whether it's stitching where you've cut beyond that, either side, not putting a hole in the inner tube, of course. Stick the cloth tape back on, and I'd found I'd pulled it so hard to get it off that I'd stretched it. So when you put it back on, it was a little bit too long, so it rucked up. Finally, of course, test. Before you stitch it back up, test it, there's not leaking. And then stitch it back up and then test again, because you might, as I did, of course, not surprisingly, it's tough material as well to try and get a needle through. So really, if you get a puncture, it's all about chucking it away. So that's why I'm thinking I'd change the rims to modern clincher rims. Good enough for me, that's why. So we'll look at this one. Yes, a little bit heavier, you'd expect that. Noise is a little bit of dragging on the disc. We can see if it's adjusted properly. You can adjust, might need adjusting. Quite strong wheels, you can see, look at the rim. Beautifully true, the wheel. Okay. Just going to go for a short spin on this one. I'll use the GoPro, and I'm going to swap the GoPro over on the other one. Wish me luck, and go for a short spin on that. couple of things I forgot to mention. This is the classic Benedetto handlebar tape, 2 layers, but there's no spring in it at all really. You have the plug-ins. I could have got Campagnolo plug-ins. Well, I might do. Stop you gouging yourself in a crash. Nice. Something to notice that the bike's quite upright. If you look at this, could be even more upright, and the back wheel even closer in. The closer everything is in, the livelier it is, as you can imagine. Whereas if you look at the Boardman, I've measured it and it's a fair bit longer, which makes for a more relaxed ride, but it means it tends to understeer if you want to do something a little bit frisky, and because the wheels are heavier, they're not so keen to turn. That's why this one's so frisky. These tend to be handmade. You can see these lugs, the tubing slides into lug and it's brazed, so you can cut to length. This is a very big frame, it's 25 inch. It's probably almost as big as they get, I think. You can have, they're quite easy to customise in terms of angles as well, depending on the lugs you get. And they fail gracefully because it's steel, so steel will bend, but it's unlikely to, you'll notice that it's bent, you'll notice something's wrong way before it actually gives out, whereas aluminium may give out, may kind of collapse without much notice, and carbon fibre for sure can just fail immediately. If there's a crack you haven't noticed, it'll just go, whereas with steel it will bend and then bend a bit more, and you'll notice before it sort of bends and goes. And they're rather more repairable, though I think people are being able to repair carbon fibre these days. But these, certainly when there are some places that take old bikes and have them, send them to Africa, where they're vital for people, and they say only steel please, because anybody who knows how to braze can patch up a steel frame, but not so carbon fibre or aluminium. So a very frisky, lively ride. The brakes, I guess, like an old school Ferrari compared to a new one. So this feels like a much safer steed, but of course this one was designed for racing, and safety wasn't really number one, and I don't suppose comfort really was number one either. It's about winning the race. So what do I expect? I'm just not strong enough for it, frankly. And I think I rather like my comforts, particularly the brakes. Even though if you're clumsy with these, they'll send you over the handlebar.